The good news is I still like the Lakers, and the series is far from over. Of the many things LeBron James will go in the record books for, LeBron has won 60% of his playoff series when he lost the first game. All time, the NBA percentage is 21%. So he's 3 times better. Remember, the Suns were favored in this game. They're not favored in the series. They were favored yesterday. The Lakers are favored in the series. Why were they favored? Well, the Suns have been off for a week. They were the better rested team. They're younger, had a ton of energy. It was the first playoff game for Phoenix in 11 years. You could feel the intensity and the juice in the arena. Phoenix at home, this was a celebration of a once proud franchise. Now the series simmers down. Both teams are equally rested. Chris Paul's not 100%. And Anthony Davis, who's never been highly motivated, just wildly talented, has always needed to be pushed and prodded. And he is, because he was so bad. We've all worked with an Anthony Davis in our life. Somebody that's super talented but doesn't have a ton of fire. You got to kind of light a fire under him, is the old saying. Well, Anthony Davis admitting after last night's game, yeah, I was terrible. I'm horrible. I'll be back. By the way, Anthony Davis, who was the best high school player in the country and then led Kentucky to a national championship as a freshman and has been marvelously talented forever, should never have the worst plus-minus in any basketball game he ever plays in. He not only did, nobody was close. He was awful. But I do think he'll be the key factor going forward, and I think the Lakers win the series. Why? DeAndre Ayton's a very talented big for Phoenix. Suns are small, but he's only 23. I don't believe he's going to lock down AD for the series. And the Suns don't have a lot of bigs. Their backup center appears to be Dario Saric. I didn't know he was a center. 6'6" Jay Crowder's another one of their biggest guys. Listen, they're talented, but they're not big. And now Anthony Davis is motivated, which you have to poke and prod him and light a fire to get the best out of him. That's reality. But when you get to a playoff series, it's always been a book, not a pamphlet. Regular season, you're just handing out flyers. Not a lot of depth. Message isn't long. You look at a little tape. Team just flew into town. That's not what a playoff series is. A playoff series is a book with chapters. Every chapter can be different. And LeBron James has been in a lot of these playoff series, and Frank Vogel has been in a lot of these playoff series. So, regular season, this happens all the time. But the idea that Phoenix is going to beat the Lakers 4 times in the next 10, 12 days, I don't buy it. I don't think they have the experience. I don't think they have the size. And that's okay. Nice win for Phoenix. They deserve it. I grew up and the Phoenix Suns were fantastic. They beat my Sonics regularly. In fact, the last time I cried during sports may have been the Suns beating my Sonics with Paul Westphal and Alvin Adams, and it may have been Connie Hawkins and Gar Hurd, and I forget who it was, but they were great for years. It's good to have them back. All right, so I want to talk about the Knicks. There's a lot to talk about, but I want to talk about the Knicks. I want to tell you a story. Is that, yeah, you know, you watch movies and Hollywood, these big companies, right? Like they put stars in movies. They put Robert Downey, Tom Cruise, Denzel. They put stars in movies because that's supposed to attract us. But about 20 years ago, there was a movie called My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It was fantastic. And we only kind of knew one person in the movie. It was John Corbett, who had been kind of a big deal in another franchise called Sex and the City. And we didn't know anybody. We didn't know anybody. And I immediately, 10 minutes into the movie, fell in love with the family. How? I didn't have any connection to anybody. Because they were so vested in one another. They loved each other so much. They were so flawed. They were so ridiculous. And they cared about each other so much. It just poured through the screen, and you fell in love with this family. And in a weird way, that's the Knicks. They have one guy from a franchise we kind of know, Julius Randle for the Lakers. And then I'm sitting around deeply invested in a team full of guys I couldn't care less about. I got Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel and Reggie Bullock and an old Derrick Rose who doesn't even play the same way. And I've got Alfred Payton and Taj Gibson. Why do I care about the Knicks? I'm not from New York. I care about them because it's so easy to like people that are so vested in one another. They are so limited. This team is so limited, but they're my big, fat New York Knicks basketball team. That's what they are. That's the movie poster. They're not great. They're not brilliant. Julius Randle's their best player. He was awful yesterday, and he's not a top 25 player. But yet the Knicks hung around against a clearly superior offensive team in Atlanta. It shouldn't have been that close. I mean, you're relying on Alec Burks to carry you yesterday, an old Derrick Rose. But it just goes to show, when you're all in, I've said this about our country, you're in one direction, you're defiant, you're coachable, you believe in one another, you can be completely limited. If you look at this roster, I mean, the Lakers got rid of Julius Randle. He was one of the first they got rid of. Forget Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Josh Hart. Now, they shipped him off early. Can't hit threes. Just look at this roster before the season starts. We would never think this is a playoff team. But they totally buy into Tom Thibodeau, who hasn't changed his expression once in 32 years in the NBA, and I buy into the Knicks. Now, yesterday, what happened? Well, Trae Young happened. He's the best player, most talented player on the floor. He's a great young player, hit a basket, won the game. The key for the Knicks is don't get too high, don't get too low. You've got a soul. The Knicks are something. They are something. They're not something great. They're not something with a high ceiling. But for Julius Randle to play as bad as he has played, probably in a month, and to hang around a much better team, it was great to see the Garden mostly jammed. The passion, there's a soul. They believe in one another. And I was here for it. The last 8 Knick games, they've had 5 different leading scorers. And yesterday, it's Alec Burks. What? Wasn't he the guy in Utah that never panned out? Taj Gibson. I remember him more from the Bulls days. But it's great. I sat there and I'm like, why am I so into this team? They're not even pretty. They're not artistic. I mean, I get when you fall in love with Steph or John Morant. You fall in love. I mean, I get Dame Lillard. There's guys out there you're like, I can't take my eyes off them. You could take your eyes off the Knicks in 1 second. There's not a lot there. Trae Young, hard to take your eyes off of. But don't get too high, don't get too low. This is exactly what the series is going to look like. It's going to go 6 or 7 games. It's never going to be pretty. The Knicks are not built to be pretty. But when you're invested in each other, it is so easy to fall in love with a team or a family or a business. It was a really good watch. Really good watch. All right, so now you don't want to overreact to any of these. Like, it's game 1. Except one team that may want to be concerned. In fact, I'm kind of surprised